A stunning new twist in the Kouri Richins murder case. According to a recently unsealed search warrant, Richins allegedly asked another person about fentanyl just weeks before her husband's death. And it is all coming out in text messages that are now central to the investigation. There's just one problem. This witness, who apparently revealed this new information, won't be able to testify during her trial because he died. We're going to dive into this shocking new development and more right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. As the high-profile case against Kouri Richins moves towards trial next spring, we have a new update for you. You see, new details have come out that suggest Kouri Richins allegedly asked a second person who worked for her to get her fentanyl, which police believe she used to murder her husband Eric in 2022. The problem is, this new witness, whose testimony could have been pivotal for the prosecution's case, is not going to be able to take the stand. Why? He passed away 2 months ago. Now, before we even get into that, we got to get you up to speed on the case. So, Kouri Richins, Utah mother of 3, was arrested in May of 2023 and is facing aggravated murder and attempted homicide charges for allegedly poisoning her husband, Eric Richins, who was found dead in their home, and also allegedly trying to poison him on a previous occasion. Now, the events leading up to Eric's death allegedly began in early March of 2022. According to court documents, Kouri Richins and her husband were celebrating the sale of a home that she had worked to flip as a real estate agent, and on the night of March 3rd, 2022, she allegedly mixed a Moscow Mule cocktail for her husband. This is a drink that prosecutors later claim was spiked with a lethal dose of fentanyl. Authorities say after serving him the drink and a marijuana gummy, Richins reportedly went to bed. Now, at around 3 a.m., Kouri says she wakes up to check on one of the children who is apparently having a nightmare, and when she gets to the bedroom that she shared with Eric, that's where she finds him unresponsive and she calls 911. Emergency responders, they show up, they find Eric Richins at the foot of the bed, they tried to revive him, but he was pronounced dead. Here's where things take a turn. An autopsy later reveals that Eric had 5 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system, and it wasn't medical grade fentanyl, it was street level. Now, Kouri Richins' defense team has suggested that perhaps Eric Richins overdosed on his own, that he was the one securing this fentanyl, but that's a separate issue. Now, investigators say, no, she got the drugs, and she got the drugs from a convicted dealer named Carmen Marie Lauber, who was working as the Richins housekeeper, and she allegedly confessed to police that she gave Richins 15 to 30 fentanyl pills on 2 different occasions around 1 month before Eric died, and she says Kouri paid her about $900 each time. Now, here's where things take a different turn. After her husband's death, Kouri Richins publishes a book, a children's book called Are You With Me? And she claimed that this was intended to help her 3 sons deal with the loss of their father. And Richins promoted the book, including on a local media show, describing it as a way to help children understand and cope with grief. And the book was dedicated to Eric, and Richins spoke about her desire to share her journey with others. But prosecutors have a different take. They argue that Richins' public grieving may have all been part of an elaborate ruse to conceal her true motivations for her husband's death. So with all of that in mind, now let's talk about that search warrant that was unsealed. And it reveals that Kouri Richins allegedly asked another person who worked for her to get her fentanyl. William Hayden Jeffs, 35-year-old handyman who worked for Richins on various properties that she owned, allegedly told police that Richins had reached out to him asking if he could acquire fentanyl and propofol. This is an anesthetic. Now, Jeffs, here's the thing, he was interviewed by authorities earlier this year. He reportedly showed text messages from Richins that corroborated his story. And the warrant doesn't specify whether Jeffs actually supplied Richins with the drugs, but it does confirm the request. And the timing of that is crucial because investigators have noted that other, quote, acquaintances of Richins may have supplied her with the drugs, including the housekeeper. But here's the thing. Just as investigators were starting to piece together Jeff's account, he was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident in September. So with Jeffs no longer able to testify, his phone is now potentially a key piece of evidence. Problem with that, of course, is you're dealing with hearsay issues, right? Out-of-court statements. And the problem is can that come in? Does Kouri Richins have an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Jeffs? No. So although there are exceptions to the hearsay rule, particularly when you have a witness who is dead, is no longer available, we will probably see a back and forth between the prosecution and the defense on that. I will say, though, after Jeffs died, a judge had granted a search warrant to seize his phone, which is now in the custody of the police department. And by the way, talking search warrants, there is apparently another search warrant from the same day, and it seems to indicate that investigators believe there might be additional writings, maybe even journals or diaries from Richins inside of that home. And that seems to be connected, based on reporting, to comments that Kouri Richins allegedly made in jail calls and messages, as well as statements from Eric's family. This is according to authorities. So it's not entirely clear what those statements are, what these writings might be, or how they even play into her criminal trial, but it's interesting nonetheless. And by the way, I should tell you, earlier this month, a judge denied Kouri Richins' second request to be released on bail.
Ultimately, the court is not persuaded. While defendant no longer faces the risk of the death penalty, she now faces 2 first-degree felonies, each with a minimum sentence of 25 years to life, in which may be run consecutively, one after the other. As before, the severity of these sanctions, put plainly, of potentially dying in prison, creates a powerful incentive for defendant to harm herself or witnesses in this case, and to flee the jurisdiction of the court. And as before, substantial evidence supports the charge that defendant secured fentanyl and deployed it to kill another person, which is inherently dangerous conduct. Moreover, defendant's relationship to her children and her ongoing real estate businesses were, in June 2023, substantial connections to the local community that mitigated the risk that she would flee. But now, in November of 2024, those anchors have been weakened substantially. The juvenile court has granted guardianship of Ms. Richins' children to members of Eric Richins' family, and through that guardianship, they are limiting Ms. Richins' contact with her children, and that circumstance is likely to persist in some form, even if Ms. Richins is released on bail. Given the extreme consequences that this case poses and the severe negative impacts that this case has had upon Ms. Richins' business and her relationship to her children, the court finds by clear and convincing evidence that there simply are not reasonably available means of mitigating her risk to the community and to herself, or the strong incentive for her to flee the jurisdiction of the court. Defendant's motion to reconsider bail and conditions of release, docket 653, is respectfully denied.
He also granted a request from prosecutors to drop 2 second-degree felony charges of distribution of a controlled substance.
We are here on several motions. I don't have strong feelings about what order to do these in, but I have a proposal, if you'll hear me out for a moment. First, the state's motion to dismiss counts 3 and 4. Ms. Nestor, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
And that is without prejudice, correct, Mr. Bloodworth?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. State's motion to dismiss counts 3 and 4, which is docket 703, is granted. Counts 3 and 4 in the third amended information are hereby dismissed without prejudice.
To be clear, though, it was not exactly clear why those charges were dropped. We speculated about it on a previous sidebar, whether it was going to be a distraction for the jury, whether they didn't have enough evidence to prove those charges, whether they feel they have enough. But maybe it was something about it that they felt it was going to weaken their case. Not sure. By the way, we checked out Kouri Richins on Truth Finder, the powerful background checker, and immediately we were able to find details about her murder charge just by putting in her name and location. And Law&Crime, we partner with Truth Finder. We use it all the time to get details on the people involved in our stories here on Sidebar. But even if you don't work in true crime, this can just be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, if you're interested, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Now, going back to this, regarding this latest update on attempting to acquire fentanyl, the investigation into Eric Richins' death revealed a very troubling pattern as prosecutors alleged that Richins had made a previous attempt on her husband's life just weeks before his death, Valentine's Day 2022. Richins allegedly poisoned a sandwich that she had left for Eric and placed it in his truck for lunch. Now, the court documents state that when Eric ate that sandwich, he became seriously ill, breaking out into hives. He reportedly took Benadryl, self-administered one of his son's EpiPens, and after he recovered, Eric had apparently called a friend saying, "I think my wife tried to poison me." And prosecutors claim that this failed attempt prompted Kouri Richins to seek something stronger. And this, by the way, was revealed in an earlier pretrial hearing.
The defendant learned from the attempt and applied it to the homicide. And we see that with what the court just raised. She wanted something stronger. She learned that whatever she used on Valentine's Day wasn't strong enough, which is why she went back and asked for something stronger. But she had a similar MO, right? You know, her MO is to go to the drug dealer, procure fentanyl, and 2 or 3 days later, 4 days later, administer fentanyl. That is the same. The drug is the same. The drug dealer is the same. The timing is the same. But she learned. She learned she needed something stronger. She also learned how to administer it. She learned that putting it in a sandwich where Eric Richins could take a bite, feel the effects, set the sandwich down, was not the proper way to administer a fatal dose of fentanyl.
And according to the prosecution's brief, Richins was able to get that something stronger from her housekeeper, Carmen Lauber. This was revealed during a preliminary hearing where a detective testified to interviewing Lauber several times and determined that she had given Richins counterfeit fentanyl pills.
In our interviews, CL told us that in early 2022, the defendant reached out to her either by phone call or text message requesting that she procure fentanyl for what the defendant reported was an investor who had a back injury.
And upon the defendant asking CL to get fentanyl, what did CL do?
CL told us that she reached out to an acquaintance of hers, acquaintance one, and requested that she introduce her to somebody that could sell her fentanyl.
Did acquaintance one introduce CL to someone that could sell CL fentanyl?
Yes, CL said that acquaintance one provided her with a phone number of another acquaintance, acquaintance two, who was someone that she knew could sell CL fentanyl.
And did CL say that she ultimately contacted acquaintance two?
Yes, she did.
What, if anything, did CL say about purchasing fentanyl from acquaintance two?
CL told us that she contacted acquaintance two after receiving his phone number and asked to arrange to meet to purchase some fentanyl from him. She stated that sometime in February she believed she met up with acquaintance two at a Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased from him 15 to 30 round green-blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl.
Using phone records through the course of your interview with CL, were you ultimately able to narrow down on what that date was in February that CL purchased fentanyl from acquaintance two at the Maverick in Draper?
Yes, based on forensic evidence, we were able to determine that that date was February 11th, 2022.
However, Kouri Richins' defense team says no drugs were found inside the couple's home following Eric's death.
Were any illegal drugs found in the home that night?
I don't believe so.
So no fentanyl was found in the home?
Not that I'm aware of.
Were there any unidentified pills, light green pills, blue pills, dark green pills, anything like that found in the home the early morning of March 4th?
I don't believe so.
Nothing was found or seized the early morning of March 4th that included fentanyl. Is that correct?
No fentanyl was seized that I'm aware of.
All right.
They also argued the possibility that this housekeeper lied, and she lied for a reason.
Does CL have a criminal drug history?
Yes.
Is she under supervision in a different county, a county other than Summit County?
Yes, she is.
And is that in relation to certain drug charges?
Yes.
What, if any, promises did you make regarding, to CL regarding her cooperation with being interviewed?
CL was not made any specific promises, but at the outset of our interviews, we explained to her that her cooperation in our investigation would result in us working with the prosecutors that were responsible for the charges she was facing.
So essentially, the defense pointed out that this housekeeper was in some trouble of her own with drug-related offenses, that she's not credible, that her cooperation, even if she lied, could help her potentially escape that trouble. And so you're kind of seeing a little bit of back and forth between the prosecution and the defense, a preview to what will be argued at a trial. Now, a month after Richins' alleged murder attempt, she reportedly added a lethal dose of fentanyl to the Moscow Mule that would ultimately kill her husband. And as I've said many times here on Sidebar, you don't have to prove motive to get a conviction for these kinds of crimes. It's not an element of it, but it's something juries and those of us observing these trials, we would like to know. It's easier for a prosecutor to sell a story if you can provide the why. So what is the why? What is the alleged motive here? Well, prosecutors allege, they argue that Kouri Richins had both financial and personal motives to kill Eric. Court documents reveal that at the time of his death, Eric Richins was worth reportedly about $5 million. Meanwhile, Kouri was in severe financial trouble. Court documents reveal that she owed more than $3 million, including substantial debts tied to her business of flipping houses. According to prosecutors, Richins had also taken out a $250,000 line of credit without Eric's knowledge, had forged his signature to do so. And prosecutors further alleged that Richins had opened life insurance policies totaling nearly $2 million on her husband in January of 2022, 2 months before he died. And those policies, according to prosecutors, were allegedly opened without Eric's knowledge. And prosecutors claim that she believed she would inherit his estate based on the terms of a prenuptial agreement. However, apparently, in secret, Eric had placed much of his estate into a trust under his sister's name. So the argument is, with mounting debts, threat of financial collapse, problems in their marriage, prosecutors say Kouri saw Eric's death as a way to solve her problems. Prosecutors wrote in a filing, quote, her bank accounts were exhausted and she was spiraling toward total financial collapse. And as the investigation into Eric Richins' death unfolded, authorities discovered several potentially incriminating pieces of evidence. Forensic analysis of burner phones used by Kouri apparently revealed troubling searches, including women Utah prison, can deleted messages be retrieved from an iPhone, can FBI find deleted messages, and what is a lethal dose of fentanyl. Prosecutors also allege that she researched how long does life insurance take to pay, and if someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? These searches, they say, are indicative of her awareness of the possible consequences of her actions and her efforts to cover her tracks. Now, as I mentioned, Kouri Richins, even though 2 charges were dropped, she is still facing some very serious charges, a total of 9 charges, including aggravated murder, attempted criminal homicide, insurance fraud, several counts of forgery and mortgage fraud, although those mortgage fraud charges and forgery charges, they're going to be tried separately from the murder charges. But she has pled not guilty to all of the charges involved in her case. And right now, her trial is scheduled to start April 28th, and if convicted, she could spend the rest of her life in prison. We will continue to follow updates in this story for you, but that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.